Hello, guys. Thank you very much for joining in. Hi, this is Ganesh Naik. I help finance professionals and students to excel in their career and become a better version of themselves. And I also guide students for the FRM and CFA exam. We have with us who is one of our students. He had the video lectures of mine, and he was preparing for the exam. Samarth, he cleared the exam in the November 2022 attempt. This was his first attempt. So we're going to be trying to, when we talk to him, we'll try to understand what was his journey, what challenges he faced, and how he was able to clear the exam. So let us start the discussion. Samarth, thank you very much for taking out time and talking to us. And first of all, if you could give a background to the audience, कि आपने कब चालू किया? When did you started your preparation? Okay, and what happened before that? Before joining me, and what was your work experience till that point in time?
Sure. Yeah, first of all, hi everyone, and thank you, sir, for uh, for all the guidance and all the material that you had provided, because of which I was able to clear the first part. So to like give a color on my background and everything, I come from a pure accounting background, so I had done my BCom and my MCom prior to starting with FRM, and I was also a CMA before I started with FRM.
Okay.
And so I cleared my first part in November of 2022. I had given the exam in November of 2022, and I had enrolled in January for FRM. But however, I never got around to like I never started studying for it until like I decided I'll give the November attempt. And so I had enrolled, I think, 3 months prior to the November exam, and that is when I actually started seeing the videos and looking at the material and properly, learning things that were there in the curriculum. And so I would say I had like studied for about 3 months for FRM, and I was also working while I was studying for FRM. So that's one thing,
Okay.
I had to manage my work plus the studies that were there.
Okay.
And yeah, so that's a bit back
Background
my
of
back.
what has happened. Yeah. Now, with respect to, so you joined us in August of 2022, and
Yes.
before that, what was the approach that you're following? I mean, how were you preparing?
So prior to August, honestly, I hadn't like started as such. I wouldn't say that I was studying for FRM. So I used to go through the books, the Schwezer books that I had. So I would go through them. I would read maybe a section or two. But when I was studying by myself, there were a lot of sections within each of these books that were not making sense to me. Say,
Got it.
for example, the quantitative analysis section. So in quantitative, I haven't been in touch with that subject for over 3 or 4 years now. The last I remember that I had studied quants was back in my first year of BCom, or probably in my 12th grade. So these subjects did not really make sense to me when I was studying by myself. And I decided that, it was high time. So when there were just 3 months left and I was very sure that I wanted to give it in November, I decided that I will like enroll for certain classes where I can get more understanding of these subjects.
Wow. Okay. And you were only referring to the Schweitzer book?
Yeah. So I would also like try to watch some YouTube videos on related to certain topics that I wouldn't understand by myself. But so that is how I actually came across your classes and the kind of content that you were making. I specifically remember the one video you had made on certain financial crisis ka case study that I had seen, and that is when I was able to clearly articulate and understand everything that was covered in that particular case. And after that, I decided, okay, if I want to go for certain classes, or if I want to maybe get a subscription for the FRM course, then I would probably go for yours, because I was able to understand everything clearly and things
Okay.
started making more sense to me.
Okay. And then when you started with us, did you follow the Excel order or the order which was given by us? कि आप थोड़ा deviate किए?
Yes, I deviate, I wouldn't say. So that was one of the most important things, I think, which was useful to me while studying for FRM, because I think everyone needs to have a system while you're preparing for such professional exams. And the sequencing that you had provided was extremely useful while I started studying and while referencing your videos. So there were certain sections which I could just read up and I could understand, but then there are options and futures and the trading strategies. Those I don't think people will who don't have as much experience or are with as little experience as mine would be able to just understand by themselves. So for those aspects I would go to your videos. I would spend some time on them, and then I would go and read the books and the content that was provided.
Okay. And you also solved the question bank which was provided. So when did you solve it?
Yes. Yes. So for majority of the sections, I had solved the question bank that was provided, and it was,
Okay.
I think every question bank has sufficient number of questions in addition to the books. That I don't think there are a lot of questions provided in the books. And like, just to tell you, I hadn't solved, like, we get a book, right, with the question papers for the along with
Practice
the
paper.
Shweza, we have another. Yeah,
Practice
so I
book.
hadn't solved a single paper out of that. I don't recommend anyone to do that, but I was short on time. So I did solve the questions that you had provided. I think only on the basis of those questions I have cleared FRM.
And
I
you were
haven't
solving on, sorry, and you were also solving on weekends के बाद में you started solving.
No, I was, so you had told me to solve on the weekends. I wasn't particularly following that because
Mm-hmm.
majority of the time that I had was going into studying it first, and I have that thing since beginning. First, I want to understand everything, and only then can I hop onto the questions. So
Got
majority
it.
of my time was putting into covering the syllabus that is there in FRM, and I had decided that after that, once I'm at least done with one reading, I can then start with the questions and everything.
Got it. Okay. And then when did you complete your reading and solving? कब हुआ complete?
Reading and solving, sir, honestly, I think it was by the last, before I did not complete solving each and every section, honestly. And I did not
Okay.
even complete each and every section of all the books. I had skipped a few chapters because there was a lot of time crunch that I had. But I think till the last date, I would keep on studying and I would keep on, at least I wouldn't leave a substantial portion out of any of the sections.
Got it.
Maximum, if I would skip something, it would be maybe one chapter or two chapter out of that entire book in any of the sections. And so foundations, I had done everything. That was a very easy section. I never skipped anything out of that. Second section, I had skipped a substantial portion because, like, again, it was a difficult section for me. And I think it's more important for everyone to understand that we need to have a holistic view of the exam. We don't need to score in the first quartile for, like, not everyone can score in the first quartile in all of the
बराबर.
sections. So it's, you need to be mindful of the scores that you need to pass the exam if that is what your objective is. We don't, not everyone should be, I think, aiming for getting the first quartiles in all of the sections. So I
Got
took
it.
that approach. I realized that not everything is important to study. More important is
Wow.
that I at least get in the first, second, or even maybe if I'm weak in something, third quartile side niche I don't want to go.
Okay. So you did some smart prep that, okay, मतलब keeping your expectation proper and
Yes,
managing those topics which you felt could be tested heavily. So you focused more on those kind of topics also. Wow.
yes, sir.
And how many mock papers you solved?
Like I said, I haven't solved entire papers in itself. I did the sums that you had provided for each of the sections. Sectionally, I had solved a lot of questions, and entire mock tests I did not get the time to do
Okay.
any of them.
Okay. So when you went for the exam, what happened in that first 1 hour of the exam?
The first 1 hour of the exam.
You started
Okay,
solving. तो कैसा
so
था पहला bit? First 1 hour.
yeah. So there were, so first thing was that I had decided, so I was trying to make a strategy on how will I approach the questions, because I had given the exam in the last, I think, second last day of that window that is there. And
Mhm.
by that time, I had a fair bit of idea of how the papers were and what kind of structure could I expect, how many sums could be there, and how much of theoretical questions were being asked. And I
Correct.
think a substantial portion of theoretical questions are asked in our attempt,
Hmm.
and around on average 25 to 30% were quantitative questions. So
Okay.
again, like quantitative, I mean like the sums that were asked.
And those were
So
easy?
I some of them were not that easy. So
Okay.
I had decided that if I don't know a question, I'll spend a maximum of maybe 30 seconds or 1 minute if it's a sum wala type of question. So I'll spend maybe 30 to 40 seconds and maximum a minute. And if not, then I'll just move on to the next. I'll flag that and I'll review it at the end when I have time. Because if a majority of the paper is theoretical, then I am pretty sure that we'll have a substantial amount of time at the end if we are not spending too much time on the questions we don't get.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So now, when you came out of the exam, was there any number in your mind that I will score 60, I'll score 70? क्या number था?
Like I honestly had like no expectation with anything as such. I have always had this mindset that I don't like to have any expectations after giving an exam, because like I have I have just developed that the scores will be what it is. There's no point in thinking about
Got it.
what it will.
Okay. So now what are the quartiles that you've got?
So I have gotten the quartiles are 1, 3, 1, 2. So
One,
I
three,
was in
one.
the first quartile for foundations, then the third quartile for quants. Like I said, I am not good in quants, guys. And then I was in the first quartile for financial markets and products, and I think second quartile for the last section, bar
War book.
and
Yes. Okay. Now, if I would ask you if you can give 3 tips from your own experience, how to clear FRM level 1, what would be that 3 tips?
the first step would obviously be have a strategy, have a map outlined. So the how I decided things was initially when I got in touch with you, you told me how to approach it. You shared the Excel with the roadmap, and you also told me how to approach it, like study the strategy that you had shared in that audio clip. So I had followed that, except for giving the sums, like solving the sums on the weekend. Apart from that, I had been following that strategy and the sequencing. So have a proper roadmap based upon the time that you have for the exam. And obviously, always if you're working, try to have at least 3 to 4 months for yourself, so that you can give good amount of hours on the weekends, because I know it will be difficult to manage with your work. So that'll be the first thing, have a proper roadmap for the exam. And then second is do solve sums. I think even though I did not give any of the mock tests, it is important that you solve sums for such exams, because even if you're reading things, it's not always that you know how to approach a question, because
Got it.
questions are always try to be modeled in a way where they are trying to test you. So it will not be direct. Straight questions kabhi bhi exams mein nahi aate. So don't be under that impression just because you've studied, you will be able to solve this. So it is important to know how they ask questions, what kind of questions they ask. And the third would be like, uh, I don't know, like these are the two most important ones. Apart from that, like be confident. If you guys are like nervous or things like that, just talk to sir, maybe, ask your questions to him, and just have someone that you can talk to, so that you don't feel all that tension or nervousness for the exam.
So when you started 3 months पहले for the
Yeah.
exam, were you confident कि clear हो जाओगे?
No, I wasn't, honestly. I had a 40-60 mindset. 40 was शायद clear होगा, 60 was नहीं होगा mostly, because like again with the job I wasn't sure if I will be able to crack that.
But really good. I mean, completing and clearing the exam in 3 months for the proper dedication and proper plan. I think so. You have been able to do it very well, because it is not easy to do it with the job, and that too in 3 months. It requires a lot of dedication. So I'm sure by looking at this, a lot of your working professionals would be able to understand that they can still go for the exam, they can clear the exam. The only thing that they need is consistency. So that is motivational, definitely. And also one thing that helped you was like highlighted, you solved the chapter as question. You didn't skip them. Okay, even though
Yeah.
you were not consistent in solving, but you didn't skip it. Okay,
Yeah.
obviously one point that mock paper has to be improved and mock paper has to be solved, which gives you an idea about the exam. That definitely
Sure.
every student should follow. But solving the chapter as question is also important because that gives you flavor of the entire chapter. Because a lot of time I'm confident that I know the chapter. The moment I start solving, I realize this is not what I was expecting. So all of these things will become easy for other students. So wonderful. I mean, this interview is going to be motivational for other students, other candidates who are going for the exam, and your journey will help them to clear the exam as soon as possible. So thank you very much, Samad, for
Sure.
taking out time and talking to us. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.